Keir Starmer comes out and goes, right, we're in a battle for the soul of the country. Yeah, we are, and we're going to win it. The Conservative Party is basically ridiculous at this point. Labour aren't going to call us racist now. And it's like, yeah, true, because you're totally irrelevant. I'm going to call Nigel Farage a racist instead, because he's relevant. Because I want Nigel Farage's majority to be unchallengeable. I want him to have, 500 seats. I want him to be the defining politician of the next 100 years if he is prepared to step into the mould and actually do it. The Prime Minister is terrified of Tommy Robinson's rallies. And so to say, they don't have an effect. No, that's had a direct effect. So we're actually dictating the terms of the conversation now. So these rallies have been a tremendous success, and we should keep doing it. Think about the Reconquista, where the Spanish had lost something like 90% of Spain, and it took them 700 years, but they just won it all back. We can easily do that. Anything can be done. Well, we could get a party of 400 patriots and just fix all of this forever.
Hello and welcome to The Current Thing with me, Dixon, and returning to the show today is one of our most requested guests. He is the artist formerly known as Sargon of Akkad, King of the Lotus Eaters. It is, of course, Mr. Carl Benjamin. How are you doing, Carl?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Thanks so much for coming and doing this. I know you hate London.
I do.
And so you said you're going to be in a bad mood purely because you had to just move through the squalor. But then again, you make me go to Swindon. So, I mean, come on.
Swindon's lovely compared to London. It's the centre of Swindon that is the bad area of Swindon. And that's not even bad. It's just diversified, so it's crap. But you go out there and Swindon's lovely, leafy, middle class. It's right. Actually any literally half a mile out of the centre of Swindon and you're in gorgeous Wiltshire. And it's like heaven on earth, a genuine paradise, the Garden of Eden, compared to this depressing place where people, you watch people walk in London and they all look very tense, hyper paranoid, but also dreary, and they look like they're prisoners in this city, and they just walk around with these goddamn slapped faces, just looking at the ground, looking miserable. And it's like, look, man, you could live anywhere in the world. It costs a lot of money to live in London. It's a lot of work to live in London, and you look so goddamn miserable about it. I can't stand it. I hate this place. I hate the people in it, and I don't know why you do it to yourselves.
So you hate me, you hate London, you hate all of us. I mean, Swindon, the town centre, that's the only bit I've seen, and that is an absolute apocalyptic dump, to be fair.
It's not that bad.
I mean, if you're going to go there, I feel
it's a run-down town centre in Middle England.
Defending London, because I'm like, I want to defend our capital city and not give it up. But at the same time, of course, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. So
at the same time, it is a scathingly accurate critique.
Yes,
so.
There is that.
Yeah.
All right, well, I've got so much I could ask you today, but I thought about, we were just talking about Farage a minute ago. You've changed your position on Farage a few times, and I wanted to ask you, what is your current view on Farage and Reform UK?
Well, I mean, it looks like that's the vehicle that we have, and we don't have much of a choice on it. Farage is, last poll I saw, 35%. The Labour were on 20, Tories were on 17, something like that. And so he's completely dominating the political landscape. And he is at least not a globalist. So there are a number of ways of critiquing Farage, from the right in particular. But he does have his virtues. And one of those was not being an internationalist. He is at least a parochialist for the country. And in the light of Labour saying that they're going to mandatorily impose a digital ID on everyone, and Farage immediately coming out and saying, right, we're not going to do that, we're going to get rid of it. This is pretty serious. That's a bloody serious turn of events. And I think that really we just have to suck it up, frankly. He's the best we're going to get.
Yeah, he was a bit strong on digital ID, wasn't he? Because that's kind of home turf for Farage. Civil liberties, kind of those traditional sort of Tory freedoms. That was it felt a lot more comfortable for him to oppose that than some of the immigration stuff, where it's almost like he's had to be nudged along.
Well, you can't really insult someone for being for civil liberties.
Right.
What's the argument against civil liberties?
Yeah, you say that, but I did see a tweet where someone in Labour was quoted, an anonymous person from the conference, saying, I'm surprised there's been pushback to this because we thought we'd done away with that civil liberties stuff during COVID. I'm only slightly paraphrasing, but they were surprised that the civil liberties arguments were still there. They thought they crushed the spirit of the English during COVID.
I saw that, and that's very interesting, isn't it? We had got past the civil liberties argument, but that was the Conservatives in charge. That was Boris Johnson. And so very much uniparty admission there.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, we agreed with everything that the Tories did. We should have locked you in your homes. Frankly, we would have locked you down harder. And why are you still concerned about these civil liberties nonsense? Isn't this a bit 17th century? It's like, okay, even if it is, yes, it is 17th. I'm happy to engage in that argument because I think it's really relevant at this point. But you can see how the system itself is just trying to outgrow the democracy it's contained within, right? The entire point of modern politics is not about the relationship of the individual to the state and the appropriate amount of liberty and restriction the state should have on it. It's actually about pure administration at this point. The idea that you could need civil liberties is very secondary to their need to administer everything in your life. And that's the future that they have planned for us. And I'm just really against that, frankly.
Yeah, it seems they're in a sort of Chinese mentality. I mean, Trudeau famously said he admired the basic dictatorship of China. Seems like that's where they all are. And they use the word populist to mean democratic, and they use the word democracy to mean oligarchy. I heard someone put it like that. I think that's
it was David Starkey who put it that way.
Was it?
Yeah,
I should have known that. He was on this podcast.
Well, he's right. I mean, populism and democracy are just the Latin and Greek terms for the same thing. So why the idea of not being a populist? The only alternative you have there is to be an elitist, and that's essentially to be anti-democracy. And so, ironically, the right has kind of found itself in the very pro-democratic frame, and the left has found itself in the pro-oligarchical frame.
Yeah.
Which is traditionally their opposites.
But it's interesting how they still have to use the language of the old world, the sort of more free world we had. They still pretend. They don't just say, yeah, we're post-democracy now, lads. Sorry about that. China, here comes China, social credit score on the way. They say we believe in democracy, and they say we believe in free speech. Starmer, when Trump's there, always go, we've got a long tradition of free speech. It's like, but then you're arresting 12,000 people a year for speech crimes, but they don't just double down and say that's what we believe in. Why is that?
It's a long explanation if you want it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Basically, they do believe in a comprehensive total state that will liberate you from any of the unchosen obligations you have and the physical needs that you have inherited from your corporeal nature as being an evolved creature on the earth. The whole point is to essentially situate your will, your mind, in a position where it's never given any form of inconvenience, where you never suffer, you never have to go without, and you never have to make sacrifices. And so, in a way, they are kind of right when they say the civil liberties thing's not really going to be a problem, because essentially you're going to have unbounded freedom, and that's the plan. Like, their intention is to get us to a point of unbounded freedom. But actually, if you think about that, that's exile. That's isolation. That's actually a terrible thing. And that's what they've been driving at the whole time. So they aren't actually being insincere. They just don't understand that having a gargantuan, intrusive managerial state will destroy aspects of humanity that actually we value very highly and we want to preserve. And these aspects are not based on individuality. They're not based on consent. They're based on being social creatures that inherit a web of social relations that we are born into and carry with us throughout our entire lives. And in fact, the entire moral and substantive content of human life is really contained in these relations, and they want to take you out of them. And actually, that's not good. And that's what the far right is. It's the area of the brain that says, actually, no, I'm an Englishman and I love my community, I love my family. I didn't choose any of these things and I didn't consent to them either, but they're brilliant and they make life worth living. And actually to be taken out of that, to be rendered a sort of stateless, atomic, free-floating individual who has no obligations or relations to anyone, is actually an evil thing to do. It used to be a punishment. We used to exile people, which is that's what that is. We used to impose that as a punishment on people. And so to have that as the overall plan for the entire civilization will require dystopian levels of control, because of course otherwise people will actually start to live as normal. And what's more, it creates a really strange relationship between the individual and the state, because the state can only see each person as a rights-bearing subject. It doesn't see them as a relations-bearing subject. The relations themselves have been stigmatized. And so that puts you in a form of strange dependence with the state. The state is the guarantor and arbiter of your rights, but it's also the thing that is most likely to take your rights away. And so it's a deeply unhealthy, almost kind of abusive relationship, where you go back to your abusive husband and you say, no, this time he might not smack me. He really loves me. Look at all the rights he's providing with me. And then suddenly you're in jail for a tweet. So it's actually a deeply unhealthy and incoherent thing that they're trying to bring into existence. And yet they believe in it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I mean, there is an incoherence there, surely. I understand the being unencumbered by all responsibilities is the kind of liberal materialist dream, whatever you want to call it, free from all the old obligations, but then centralized into a state that controls everything. Is that why it takes away the free speech? Because obviously there's a contradiction if they think that's freedom, but you're not free to say anything. It's obviously not freedom.
Well, it depends what you mean by freedom, actually, doesn't it? If it's freedom to do the things and say the things that you truly believe, that's not really freedom. That's a form of freedom, but their view of freedom is freedom from someone being able to make a claim against you, basically. And this is all laid out in just all canonical liberal texts, really, Rousseau particularly, where it's maximal dependence on the state and minimal dependence on one another. And so
you give up, it's almost like a pact with the devil. You give up that one central freedom, and then you sort of, all others are unlocked, all licensed. You can do pretty much what you want, as long as you have total fealty to the centralized state.
Yes. And this is why all of life has to be drained of morality as well. Because, of course, judgment comes from your community, right? Your moral standards come from your community. And so actually being a strange, pride degenerate doing disgusting things in the street, that presupposes a moral community that actually has intentionality for some other reason. That is something that is beyond yourself. And of course, that's the innocence and sanctity of children, right? To create an environment that's actually wholesome for children to be born and raised in. Well, that's, as far as the liberal state is concerned, that's no morally better or worse in and of itself. And actually, it's got a huge number of collective hang-ups that the liberal state says, well, what about the freedom to be an insane degenerate at pride parades in the middle of the street? What about their freedom? It's that's not a freedom. That's actually them imposing on a community. But if you only see each person as an individual rights-bearing subject, then the community itself, and you've stigmatized the community as basically being illegitimate because it was never chosen, then you can see how they would arrive on one side and not the other.
All right, very interesting. Since I mentioned it as well, and it's related to that, it is reported the police are making 12,000 arrests a year. I saw a chart, I don't know if it was accurate or not, it seemed probably accurate, where we were leading the world in that by far. The second was Belarus, which had about 6,000, and then everyone else was way lower. Quite an extraordinary thing for the pioneer of civil liberties to be leading the world in speech arrests, which are essentially thought crimes.
I think, on that chart, I saw that chart myself. China was quite significantly far down.
Only 3,000 or something.
Yeah. But if you think that the population of China is in the billions, right? We've got 70 million, something like that. So the fact that we, just in raw numbers, outpace China by such a magnitude suggests that per capita we're probably the most tyrannical state on earth when it comes to speech crimes.
Incredible. I mean, the latest one as we record has been probably Pete North arrested in the middle of the night for posting a meme, which many other people posted.
And he keeps posting afterwards.
And he keeps posting, which is interesting.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I'm laughing, even though it's completely awful, but it's kind of I'm laughing at the absurdity. And friends of ours have been detained at the airport, and even George Galloway was recently detained at the airport. So my question is, how do we get out of that? I mean, that's an international disgrace. How do we get out of that as a country?
I mean, obviously the surface answer is, well, just stop arresting people for crimes on speech. So repeal any of the laws that are being used to criminalize people because of things that they say. Adopt a kind of American-style First Amendment approach to people talking would be the most obvious answer. But the problem is that the nature of the society that they're trying to create underneath all of this, and through which the speech crimes are a kind of exigency, hasn't gone away. And so the fact that the individual rights claims that the state is responding to in these speech crimes by criminalizing certain amounts of speech reveals that the problem will persist. And so, okay, even if Nigel Farage comes in and says, right, okay, we're going to get rid of these laws, a Labour government will come in the next day and say, well, actually, no, we need these laws to protect these minority communities from negative characterizations, because somehow that's a form of oppression. And so the state, in this, the state considers itself to be the arbiter between groups and not the source of oppression in and of itself. Because, I mean, at least in the sort of classical liberal heyday, it was understood that the state was the primary instrument of oppression. But when you have the universal administrative state that seeks to liberate everyone from the society itself, and consciously so, it views itself only as a tool of liberation. And so what it looks for is the imposing opinion of the majority against the minority, and says, right, okay, that there is a form of oppression, and my job as a liberatory apparatus is to bring those people out of that. And if that means criminalizing the majority when they start saying things, then that's what I do. And so you'll notice how liberalism itself, it's not even being perverted. What it is kind of reaching its final phase and its final form, where it understands that the purpose of it is to liberate people from one another.
So, yeah, and as Starkey said, rights used to be individual rights against the state. Now they're rights of minorities against the majority. Very much what you're saying there. You can't harm so-called anyone, and your words are a form of harm, and that's the logic of it. And it's so hard to get rid of, partly because it comes from these quangos like the College of Policing, who aren't even elected anyway. So they'll persist, presumably, throughout any government, unless Farage really can dismantle it, which is a massive job. As we record, it's the Tory conference.
Is it? I didn't even know.
Yeah, I know. It is actually happening.
It's the first I'm hearing.
I've watched some speeches from it.
I haven't seen anything going on social media. The only thing I've seen are empty conference halls.
Yeah, it has been very empty from pictures I've seen. I did watch Kemi's speech, a little dull. Some of her interviews were okay. She wants to deport 150,000 people a year or something, which I'm great. But she said, but they asked her on BBC, where will they go? And she didn't seem to have thought that through, which was pretty extraordinary. But I started to think she's in it for the long term. This is just my view. She's thinking when reform mess up, we'll still be there looking relatively sensible. What do you think? Are the Tories completely dead? Do you have no opinion on them anymore? What do you think?
I think it's probably not the wisest move to put an immigrant in charge when the sentiment of the nation is going towards anti-immigration, and then having the immigrant promise to do all of the based anti-immigration stuff. I think representation actually does matter, and I think most of the country don't really see themselves represented in Olu Kemi Badenoch. I don't know why I do know why they've chosen it. The Tory membership were like, right, Labour aren't going to call us racist now. And it's like, yeah, true, because you're totally irrelevant. They're going to call Nigel Farage a racist instead, because he's relevant and because he actually embodies something about Britain, particularly England, that people actually feel represented in and resonates with them. And so you can sit there with your diversity hire, which is what Kemi Badenoch is, and that's how she's arrived at the top of the Conservative Party, which is remarkable because the Conservative Party is just there in the very admission of Kemi Badenoch as their party leader, saying, yeah, no, we are exactly what Labour have made of us. They beat us with the racist stick until we put an African immigrant in charge, and therefore elect us and we'll govern the country in the way that you want. No, you're going to govern the country exactly as you always have, in the way that Labour wants. You've always done everything the Labour Party have wanted from you because you don't know how to reject their moral judgments of you. You don't know how to reject them in any way, shape or form. And so you just sit there and go, yeah, we're just the right wing of the Labour Party. We're just like, yeah, we want Labour. Just 5 years later, actually. We just want a bit of slur. And that's all the Conservatives have ever offered and can offer. And so what's the point? What's the point of voting for the Conservatives? I may as well vote for the Labour Party and get at least what they're promising now, Like, I don't, like,
Why get it later?
exactly. Why bother?
Yeah.
And so, it's the Conservative Party is basically ridiculous at this point, and they're so wedded to like inner party harmony that I saw Michael Gove's interview with Harrison Pitt where he was saying, "Oh yeah, no, Kemi Badenoch will be the leader for 20 years." It's like, great, because I was leading the Zero Seats campaign. Great, I want Kemi Badenoch to be the Conservative Party leader for 20 years because I want Nigel Farage's majority to be unchallengeable. I want him to have 500 seats. I want him to be the defining politician of the next 100 years if he is prepared to step into the mold and actually do it. I want him to have this kind of legendary run through politics at the end of it, where he just goes in and goes, right, I've got David Starkey's Great Repeal Bill, and I'm going to just do everything we should have done when Enoch Powell was not in charge, but in the Conservative Party. We're going to do all of this because that's how Britain should be, and we have the power to reset it. And at any point, we actually could get a government of like 400 patriots and just go mental, basically, like Tony Blair did, in fact, with communists. Get a party of 400 traitors and backstab the country for generations. Well, we could get a party of 400 patriots and just fix all of this forever. The power lays in Parliament, whether they like it or not, and you just have to know what to do and have the will to do it.
Yeah, that's the hard part. So you're of the view that Kemi is an immigrant because she sort of touched down here.
Because she
was
came
born
from
here.
Africa, yeah.
She was born here, then she grew up in Nigeria until she was 16.
Exactly. Like this anchor baby nonsense was abolished not long after she was born as well. So because we're not America. And
you were right about the framing, because I was watching Matthew Syed's speech. He just joined the Tories 2 weeks ago
sounds like a typical Tory.
Yeah, he joined and he did a speech. It was more intelligent than a lot of the speeches you get, but it was still framed from the left. He spoke out against cousin marriage and Sharia courts, which was nice, but he did say it from the perspective of Sharia courts are sexist, and he also said, do brown women not count? So it's the bigotry of reverse expectations, meaning we ignore things like Sharia because it's inconvenient for the left, so they allow sort of human rights abuses to take place. Far more obvious point is just, of course, we don't want Sharia courts in England. We don't really have to even explain why. But he could only explain it from a left-wing human rights perspective, which I thought, and sexism, which was kind of interesting.
Sounds like it fit in perfectly in the Conservatives.
It does, actually,
because this is the kind of thing that Labour just don't bring up anymore. They dropped all of that about 4 or 5 years ago, actually, didn't they? Like, if you listen to them now, they don't go around running around calling everyone sexist. Like, it's actually the Green Party who are still doing that. Like,
you think Labour are more based than the current Tories?
It's not that they're based. It's just that's an angle of attack whose time has passed, right? But the Conservatives are still like, oh yeah, we're an anti-sexist, anti-racist party. It's like, okay, and Nigel Farage doesn't claim to be that. I mean, he does sometimes, but like, the popular perception is that Nigel Farage is not that. Like, I saw polling the other day that suggested that something like a quarter of Reform voters, like, half of Labour voters are like, oh yeah, Reform are a racist party. Like 40% of Conservative voters are like, yeah, Reform is a racist party. And 25% of Reform voters are like, yeah, Reform is a racist party. So, this is the popular perception, is that Reform are the right-wing racist party. And yet the Conservatives are still like, yeah, no, guys, we're woke. Yeah.
And it's kind of ridiculous. But I guess Reform's our best bet, like you said. Can we even recover from this radical change in demographics? You were saying if we had 400 patriots, we could fix everything. But with immigration policy being as absurd as it's been with the Boris wave and so on, and with the low birth rate issue, can we ever actually logistically recover this?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Everything can be recovered.
Nice.
Think about the Reconquista, where the Spanish had lost something like 90% of Spain. And it took them 700 years, but they just won it all back. We can easily do it. Anything can be done.
It's just our time scale is a bit off. We always want to do it like now in our lifetimes, but it might be a massive project.
Yeah. It's doubtless going to take generations. But, England in the beginning of the 1990s was 95% English, and now it's 75% English. That's not good, but you can see that we are still the overwhelming demographic majority of the country. And the question is, who wants it more? Do they want England more than we want England? And the answer is, of course, no, because we're paying them to be here. If we just, honestly, you would solve half of the immigration problem overnight if you just turned off the money. If if you stopped foreigners from claiming benefits, from being able to access the NHS, from getting free housing, half of them would go home.
Do you think mainstream political parties can ever espouse these kinds of positions? Are they kind of locked in what is sometimes called the Civnat position? Can they ever talk, in other words, in terms of the interests of something like the native British people or whatever it would be called? Can they ever broach that?
Probably not, but they can still enact policy that does. I mean, Nigel Farage saying we're going to end indefinite leave to remain, and then everyone calling him a racist, and then Shabana Mahmood and the Labour Party going, yeah, that's a good idea. We're going to end indefinite leave to remain as well. It is entirely possible, as they're showing us, and that's now, right? Who knows where we'll be in 10 years when the Zoomers are actually a large percentage of the workforce goose-stepping down the road, you know. I think things are changing quite rapidly. And it's the boomers are some of the most liberal people left in society, frankly. So, committed to the sort of 20th century view of the liberal British state. They have not replicated this attitude in younger generations. And that's more for them. They're going to get something very different that they probably wouldn't agree with. But there we go. I mean, this is the world that they've created. And if they're not happy with it, maybe they should take some accountability for that.
Yeah, you mentioned Shabana Mahmood there. She did a speech recently basically attacking people who say that she can never be English or British. Can she ever be English?
Well, there's a question of categories there, right? So when you say British, you are talking about a landmass, a geographic place. And so, yeah, she was born in Birmingham and grew up in Britain. So it's reasonable to say she is a product of Britain, the landmass, the place, and she has British citizenship, as in the state, the civic identity. But English is an ethnic identity, and you can't change that. So, no, she can never be English. She can be a product of Britain, and she can understand English society very well in the way that the English people are, because she's been here her whole life. So I don't doubt that she has a lot of first-hand knowledge of our folk ways, we might call them. But you can't change your ethnicity. There's just, I can't go to another country and be something else. I saw a bunch of conservative politicians arguing about Isabel Oakeshott, because she was like, well, of course she can't be. Even Isabel Oakeshott, was like, well, of course she's not English. And they were like, well, I mean, if you were born in Somalia, Isabel, you'd be Somalian. It's like, no, she wouldn't. She would still be ethnically English. She might be a product of Somalia as a location, and she might speak Arabic or Somali, whatever they speak, I don't know. And she might even be a Muslim, but she will still be English.
Yeah, I saw that, and that kind of exposed the absurdity, because no one really thinks that. No one really looks at Isabel Oakeshott, this sort of very,
average Somali woman,
very white blonde woman, and thinks you can be Somali. Yeah. No one actually thinks that. They don't think I can be Pakistani either. And that was I'm just.
I believe in you, Nick.
If I keep working on it, I'm the neutral interviewer here. But my take on Shabana Mahmood was, you're not going to give up your identity. She's going to say she's proud of Pakistan and things like this. We know this. It's just obvious.
Well, she's got a history of doing it.
Right. But she's going to, when you say she's English, the problem is it renders that meaningless. If I'm also English and she's English, and we're so obviously different, and she's not going to give up her Pakistani identity. So my claim was she gets two identities, you get nil. It's 2-0 because yours is rendered meaningless. But she'll keep the Pakistani one, and she'll gain the English one. But in her gaining that one, it kind of negates yours. So it's sort of 2-0. That's how I saw it.
It's also very much an emperor has no clothes moment. It's not true.
Right.
Like, no one thinks it's true.
She
wouldn't be complaining about racism against her or whatever all the time if it was true. Why would an English person be complaining about racism by the English against Pakistanis if you were just thinking, like, it's never happened to me? Like, why have you ever had English people berate you racially? Of course not. It would be ridiculous. There's no grounds for it to happen. It's just not true. And so you are right. It would be that, she would gain two identities and you would essentially lose your own. But it's not going to happen because it's not true. And a kid will turn around and say, but she's a Pakistani. And everyone will be like, oh no, the emperor has no clothes. And she'll be like, Allahu Akbar.
She's a Muslim, and she says it's the biggest part of her life.
It's literally the worldview through which she sees the whole thing. And then I saw her the other day complaining about Islamists. It's like, but what is an Islamist apart from someone who views the entire world through the prism of Islam?
It was quite strange. She said she never heard of someone, because we had this horrible alleged killer called Jihad, as his actual name. And Shabana Mahmood said she'd never heard that name as a Muslim growing up. But then Callum, our friend Callum, found that loads of people in her own constituency were called jihad.
Which really implies that she's not a great politician who looks after her own constituency either.
Or she's making it up. I mean, neither's great.
She's prepared to tell one lie, maybe another is not that much of a leap.
Well, yeah, I always say, look, it doesn't have to be a whole obsession, but I'm not going to say, for example, Rishi Sunak, that was a big thing at one point, is English, because it's not true. And that's the main thing as well. It's just not true. And we don't know where that leads. Like, I'm not going to say men and women because it's not true. And I'm not going to say Rishi Sunak's English. You're making me say polite lies, but we've seen that doesn't go well.
You don't believe in transracialism.
Right.
India does. India was like, look at that Englishman who got made Prime Minister of England. Incredible. Celebrations all across India for the English Prime Minister. They just love us so much. It's preposterous, and everyone knows it's preposterous.
Did you see Stefan Molyneux's tweet that
no.
that mean he says because the people colonizing India were just Indian
oh yeah, I
all
did
along.
see this. Yeah,
so it was never colonization. So there's no problem.
Yeah, reparations from who? What are you talking about? We were just Indians, bro.
We was Indians.
Yeah, exactly. You know, not David Lammy, Lenny Henry came out the other day and was like, oh yeah, the Caribbean community is owed
19 trillion.
Yeah, 19 trillion. It's like, okay, A, do you think our country is worth 19 trillion? Because it clearly isn't. But B, who from? I thought you were English.
Yeah. All very absurd. The discourse, the so-called Overton window, seems to have changed on this. Do you think, therefore, the online right, so-called, actually has had an influence on mainstream politics?
No doubt whatsoever. This wasn't possible like 5 years ago because Elon Musk didn't control Twitter. The online right, I would put as being singularly responsible for dragging everyone to the right by just the repetition of facts and truths and actually a moral claim. Actually, the native populations of each country do have a claim to their own countries, and the left recognises this in the question of Palestine, so we can assert the same principle for ourselves, and all they can do is scream racist at you, which is not really very persuasive anymore, unless you're a member of the Conservative Party. Yeah,
no, X has made a massive difference. Elon owning it, bringing people like you back on the platform, and other people way more out there than you, and also just...
Yeah, like Rupert Lowe.
But also just seeing the videos constantly of how life actually is has sort of changed a lot of things. Now, of course, they'll try and censor that with the online safety bill, but it's not that successful so far. All right. What about the march that you went on? And you didn't actually, speaking of Elon, he bumped you. You didn't get to speak because of him, which must have been very frustrating. But
it's not that
richest man in the world shows up, bumps your spot. I did stand up for over a decade, so I know what it's like when someone bumps your spot, someone famous, or they push you much later in the night. So you were meant to speak at the Unite the Kingdom March, 13th of September, but you were there and you've spoken at other ones, and you're quite an advocate of these. And some people in the kind of online right sphere, if we want to call it that, less keen on these marches. What did that achieve, that march?
Exactly what it set out to achieve. The point was a demonstration of scale. And so we began these in, I think, June 2024. So these Unite the Kingdom rallies, and I've been at every single one. It was me, Tommy, Lawrence Fox, and a few others, which is like, look, we need to just start gaining momentum in just politics and just to impose upon them that actually we're the majority of the country and we're not happy with how things are. And the first one was like, I don't know, 5,000-10,000 people in Parliament Square. And they just kept growing. And then you saw the last one, which I think was probably somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million. And even they had to be like, oh yeah, it's 150,000. It's like, and that was enough to make them crap themselves. I've never seen so many white people in one place. Jon Snow cowering in the corner, looking at the Sea of England flags, and it was a Sea of England flags, realizing that there is a political consciousness arising amongst the English themselves. And they realise that, oh wait, Gammonzilla is awake and he's stirring and he's not happy. And actually, you saw Keir Starmer on stage the other day. What was he at that progressive conference in London, saying that he realised this is a battle for the soul of the country. I mean, this has put the government on notice. Like the Prime Minister is terrified of Tommy Robinson's rallies. And so to say, they don't have an effect. No, that's had a direct effect. What it is a form of psychological warfare, essentially. Kind of the Rorschach position of, no, we're not trapped in here with you. You're trapped in here with us, actually. Like there isn't a politician in Britain that could could have got half that number of people on the streets anywhere in this country. And yet Tommy Robinson can be like, yeah, okay, we're out. And that's it. And it was huge. And you can see that it just put the shiver of fear down their spines. And now they don't really know how to maneuver. But you'll notice that they're all desperately trying to claim to be patriots now. You'll notice that patriotism is now the frame in which they will have to try and operate. And that's great. That's changed the moral foundation of internationalism and foreign good to, oh no, these things are actually all native. Trust us, bro. So we're actually dictating the terms of the conversation now. So these rallies have been a tremendous success, and we should keep doing them.
Yeah, and I actually shared that clip. I wish I checked it now because I can't remember the exact wording, but it was so clear that Starmer was spooked by it.
Yeah.
It was absolutely clear. He was genuinely chilled by it. And as you say, the sheer numbers. And of course, not just white people, as Trevor Phillips and people pointed out, it was mixed, and it was not racist, as even he pointed out, to use sort of the left's language for a second. It was just normal people. They had to concede. But the critique is, one, protests are by their nature permitted by the state, unless you veer out of the designated zone with a flag and then you get brutally manhandled, even if you're a small woman. But within certain zones, at least, they are permitted. Therefore, they're inherently not a threat. The other thing is they are very easily ignored. They're not direct action. They don't have clear goals. So, for example, I went on the anti-Iraq war march, which I'm always happy to say because I think I was right.
Yeah.
That was completely ignored. 1 million people in London. Blair just went, whatevs. Bad for his legacy, but he certainly didn't care about...
Well, hasn't held him back, has he?
Never stopped him.
No.
So won't this just be... Isn't this actually all just a bit of a fun day out, but permitted by the state, will be completely ignored?
If that were the case, why is Keir Starmer crapping his pants? It wasn't ignored. The government is panicking. All of the liberal elite are panicking because they're like, oh my God, 1 million nativists were out on the streets. And what are we going to do? Because that, for every person who turned out, there are going to be half a dozen who are sympathetic to the cause and who are watching online. Like, millions were watching it online. Like this, and Keir Starmer comes out and goes, right, we're in a battle for the soul of the country. Yeah, we are, and we're going to win it. And that's good. Because the thing is, this is the thing about the online right. And they've got, like, Leninist fantasies of being some sort of vanguard that's going to overthrow the state. That's not going to happen. And the Welsh Taliban is never going to start, be hanging out in the foothills of Snowdon, evading the British Army or something. That's not what's happening. What's happening is that the power of selection is still in the hands of the British people, because we are still democratic, whether you like it or not. And therefore, they know they can get deselected by the British public. And so this rising ethnic consciousness, and as you say, it wasn't like some sort of racial purist march or something, but it was an English nativist march. Right, if you look at the photos, overwhelmingly the sort of 90+% core pillar of the people turning out were English people waving English flags. And around the edges you have other nationalities and whatnot, and they're welcome because they're patriots too, right? But the point is not a revolution in the sort of French revolutionary sense. The point is to show that the currency of democracy is changing. And if you're going to get elected, you're not going to get elected as an internationalist. You're not going to get elected as a Europhile or any kind of xenophile. No, you are going to get elected as a hardcore British patriot who honestly makes like some of the things I've been saying recently. Basically, Starmer's Labour is veering into BNP territory in many places, right? Because of this nativist sentiment. And it's about, frankly, psychological warfare against the establishment. Because they always, and the left has always done this, held the conceit that they are somehow the majority. And if the majority just comes out firmly against them and says, no, F you, we actually hate you and we're going to ruin your entire project and we don't care, Starmer's there on a stage with all of his international pals nervously twitching and saying, yeah, this is bad, this is a war for the soul of the country. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The entire multicultural project, the UK, is coming to an end. They can see that a nativist English England is coming into view, and the people who are going to make that happen are on the streets, and all of these people can vote.
Yeah, it certainly seemed a moment where Starmer said, you're an enemy of national renewal. It's like he saw those people on the street, and he said, oh, they're my enemy instinctively.
Yes.
They're the enemy of my entire project.
Yep.
And he said, and I talked to you about this actually, in his speech, people say our type of politics is dying out. It's not. And I thought, sounds like it's dying out.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing you say when your politics is dying out.
Because
Yeah.
that was just weak, just even mentioning that. I was like, oh yeah, your politics is dying out across the world because it's a battle between nationalism versus globalism. But won't he just now crack down even more? Starmer and people like him using things like digital ID and the police force and the judiciary, won't he just crack down even more?
Oh, maybe. I mean, a dying regime always lashes out at the things that have used as a threat, but it's dying. And this whole thing, like, they're rushing to get this done. I don't think this was something. I mean, Starmer knocked back the idea of digital ID, like, what was it, 8 months ago, something like that. And now he's found himself in a precarious position because the government's incredibly unpopular. Because whether you like it or not, the polls actually do matter. Like, people are like, okay, but we are still going to have to go through another election. And if we get completely hosed at the polls, if we lose, 200 MPs or something, possibly more, in fact. I mean, some of the latest polls have Labour on like 76 MPs. So 350 or so MPs as an absolute bloodbath. Why would you donate to the Labour Party if you're a donor? Why would you be a member of the Labour Party? Why would you want that? What good would that be? So, we can analyse it through the lens of elite theory all we want. but the reality is democracy actually informs how these people are in their positions of power, what they can do in the future, and whether their parties even have a future. And so they rightfully look at 1 million people who are diametrically opposed to them and say, right, you're the enemies of our multicultural society. And it's like, yeah, no, we are, kid. We are your enemies, and we're going to ruin you. We're going to destroy you. Like, we are going to get that government of 400 frothing at the mouth patriots who are going to literally look at the system you built and be like, right, we've got a bill here that will destroy every aspect of it in day one. And it's going through because there are no factions internally in Nigel Farage's party. Like, there's not like, long established coalitions inside Reform. It'll be a bunch of newbies who are just like, yeah, everything's terrible, but we'll just do whatever Nigel wants. So Nigel is actually in a golden position. And if anyone will ever have the chance to actually thoroughly root and branch reform the system, unfortunately, it's going to be Nigel. So, and I'm not terribly optimistic, right? But he's going to have the golden opportunity.
Yeah, they're not newbies in the sense that it's former Tories. I mean, Danny Kruger was the most high-profile.
They're not going to get 400 former Tories. They're going to have to get a bunch of people who just are not really in politics,
right?
Which is what Farage has been doing. If you think about the people that, think about the the council elections, where they're like, this 19-year-old has been put in charge of a £400 million budget. It's like, good, maybe he'll do something with it. It can't be any worse than the people who came before. Good.
I did see a post today just about Kent and reform, saying they've not been able to slash the cost in the way they thought. And they said, and the tweet was saying this will be what happens on a national level. I mean, it could be that the country is so screwed financially and in many other ways that reform can't even do what they want to do.
Yeah, but the important thing for reform is not actually to balance the budget. That's very much downstream of the problems that we face. The issue for reform is to destroy the system that has transcended the need for democracy. When Liz Truss got into power and was like, I got to the highest pinnacle of power in Britain, I found I couldn't do anything. Well, that's because your party sucks, right? That's because the Conservative Party is a left-wing Labour Party in blue. And you were like, oh, right, we need to smash the quangocracy. We need to, annex the Bank of England. We need to destroy, the devolved parliaments. We need to get rid of the Supreme Court. We need to get rid of all these hate speech laws. The Conservative Party would never have consented to that because that would make them afraid. That would mean actually doing something productive. That's really what Nigel Farage should be thinking of doing.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Truss very much rejected by the system. Now she's quote tweeting Sargon tweets. We're in a brave new world.
You get around, don't you?
I find that amazing.
You know what? In 2019, when I ran for UKIP, and I went to the count at the end, right? I only got 3.5% of the vote or something, obviously, which is not that bad actually when you think about it. But all the Conservatives there, all the younger Conservatives, were thrilled to see me because they were obviously fans of my channels and watching and stuff. And they were like, oh no, we've been forbidden to come and talk to you. And I was like, oh, don't worry, you'll all come to my position eventually. And I just can't help but feel that things are going in our direction.
That's so funny, yeah. And you're like, now your former Prime Minister's quote tweeting me. Someone asked me yesterday, are you at the Tory party conference? I was like, I don't think I'd be allowed. I don't think I'd even be allowed at the Reform one because I've criticised everyone across the board.
be bad for my image. Why would I want to be seen there?
Good point.
it'd be difficult enough to go to the Reform one, let alone the Tory one.
Yeah, I know I'd be banned from everything because I've criticised everyone. That's my thing. I think you've got to be like that as a commentator. But lastly, on the whole March theme, you've been criticised for your association with Tommy Robinson. It's by everyone. Because,
really?
Yeah, because it's fascinating because, of course, the mainstream still says he's just the devil, he's a white supremacist, as Camilla Tominey called him, who I like Camilla, and she's been a colleague of mine at GB News, but she's completely wrong on that. They're completely out of date. I mean, they're just wrong. And it's a sort of particularly British phobia. It doesn't happen in other countries where they just see him normally. But you've been criticised and from the different side, which is he's incredibly Zionist and he's perhaps to the left, even on certain other topics. He's very sort of, I'm not sure if he's pro-multicultural exactly, but something like that. He's focused obviously particularly on Islam, but other than that one issue, he's basically something like a neoliberal, neocon Zionist.
Not quite. You can see that he's not someone who has training in political thought, right? He's not a political philosopher. What he is an activist and community leader.
All right, that is the end of the free episode. But if you want the full podcast, go to nickdixon.net for all the extra content, all my articles. That is my Substack, nickdixon.net. And we need your help to keep this whole thing going, keep the lights on, this amazing production, hiring people, etc. nickdixon.net to support us. It's £5 a month, which is about the cost of some sort of fancy latte in London, or as a slight discount if you get the yearly option, or it's just £5 a month. So we'll see you on nickdixon.net, and thank you very much.